Hi everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. Can you remember my Hollandex fabric box? This is the third fabric. So in today's video, I'm going to be using this fabric to share with you guys how I went about the making of these beautiful dresses here. Now at first, I made this into a short dress as you can see in the middle of this video you're seeing right here. And then I decided to change it into a long dress as you see here. So if you're interested in learning how I went about this, keep on watching and let's get started. So guys, we are going to start by drafting out our basic dress pattern, and I am drawing out a straight line to serve as my starting line. So this is the shoulder line. Now from the shoulder line, I'm going to go ahead and take my measurement from my shoulder to bust, and I'm going to mark it. The next measurement will be from my shoulder to waist, which is about 15 and a half, and I'm going to mark it here and also draw a straight line across. So for emphasis sake, this is the bust line, and then this is the waistline here. Now the next line is going to be the hip line. So I'm going to take a measurement from my shoulder to the fullest part of my hip, and I'm going to make a mark and also draw a straight line across. This is the hip line. So the last line we are going to be drawing out is the length that I want the pencil part of this dress to be. So from my shoulder, I measured it down to 35 inches. This is now going to be my hemline, and I'm going to draw a straight line across this point as well. So from this point, we are now going to measure the flare that we are going to be adding from here. But first of all, let's go ahead and draw a straight line across. So now I have the shoulder line, bust line, waistline, hip line, and hemline. Now coming down to the shoulder line, I am going to go ahead and divide my shoulder measurement into two equal halves. My shoulder measurement is 14 and that divided by 2 is 7. I'm going to make a mark here. Now still from the center, I'm going to go in by 3 inches, which is how wide I want this neckline to be. And then I'm going to also come down by 3.5 inches for the neck depth. So 3 inches in and 3 inches down. So I'm going to connect these 2 points to give me a round neckline. Now from this shoulder point I had earlier, I'm going to come down by 1 inch from my shoulder slope, and I'm going to connect from this 1 inch point into the top of my neckline. Next, to determine my armhole depth, I have always said this on the channel, you're going to divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 to what you get. So when I did that calculation, I got 7 inches. So from the shoulder slope, I came down by that 7 inches, and I'm drawing a straight line across this point, and this line now becomes my chest line. So from the shoulder slope, I'm going to draw a straight line to meet the chest line. Let me take you back to a time. So guys, the next thing I went ahead to do was to find the midpoint between my shoulder slope and my chest line. So I did this with my tape, and I marked a point here, the middle point, and from this middle point I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch. Okay, so once you're through with this, you're going to now come down to the chest line, and you're going to mark your bust measurement divided by 4. On the chest line, mark your bust measurement divided by 4. So once you're through with that, you're going to connect all these points to give you your curve. Next thing we're going to do is to draw out our dart. So I'm going to be doing it on the bust line, waistline, and hip line. So I'm going in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement on all these lines. So I'm creating a point with my measurement, and after that I'm going to join all the points together with my straight ruler. Next, I'm going to go ahead and take in my dart on the waistline. So I'll go out on both sides of this line by 1/2 inch. And next, from this waistline, I'm going to come down by 4.5 inch for the length of my dart. If you are taller, if you're someone who is tall, you can use 5 inch for this. Now from the bust, I will come down by 1/2 inch, and now I'm going to connect all these points to give me my darts. So guys, once you're done drafting out your darts, the next thing you want to do is to start adding your body measurements. Now on the bust line, I'll mark my bust measurement divided by 4 here. On the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4. I'm going to mark it here, and then I'll have to replace my dart, which is about 1 inch. So you measure your dart and replace it back. And then you're going to come down to the hip line. On the hip line, you're going to mark your hip measurement divided by 4. And you're going to mark it here. And on the hemline, what I do is I just remove 1 inch from the measurement I took on the hip and mark it on the hemline. So instead of using 9 inches that I used on my hip, I'm going to be using 8 inches on the hemline. So that's going to give it like a hip shape. So once that is done, I'm going ahead to join all my points together with my curve to give me my body shape. So from the chest line, you connect all the way to the waist, from the waist to the hip, and then lastly from the hip to the hem. So once you're through with this, you have basically done drafting out your front pattern. I'm going to label this front, and then you're going to go ahead and cut out your front pattern. So guys, the next thing is to cut out the back pattern, and the back pattern is very similar to the front. The major difference is that the back must have a zipper allowance line, and as you can see for the back here, I also did a higher neckline than what I did in front. Now from the zipper allowance line, I'm going in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement from the chest line, bust line, waistline, and hip line here for me to get my dart. Now remember, when we were drafting out the front pattern, we started taking half of our nipple to nipple measurement from the bust line. That's another difference between the front and the back. So after doing this, I went ahead to draw a straight line across, and on the waistline I went out on both sides by half of an inch, just like we did when we were drafting out the front. Now from the chest line, I'm going to come down by half of an inch here, and then from the waistline, just like I did on the front pattern, I'm going to come down by 4.5 inches. So now after this, I'm just going to go ahead and join all the points together with my ruler to give me my back dart. So basically the back dart is longer at the top than the front dart. So guys, that's all for the dart. So now the next thing you want to do is to add all your body measurements to the back pattern. So now when you're adding your body measurements to the back pattern, make sure that all the measurements you are taking are starting from the zipper allowance line. So that's just the major difference. So once you're through with that, go ahead and join all your points together again to give you your body shape. So I'm going to go ahead and label this the back. And then from the waistline, I'm going to draw the waistline into the zipper allowance. Now I'm going to remove that bulginess that is likely to show itself at the back of your zipper when you fix it for a long dress like this. So now what I did is to go in from the zipper allowance line from the center by 1 inch. And from the point I got, I'm going to draw a straight line towards the upper part and towards the bottom part, just like I'm doing like this. So once you're through with this, you're going to cut off that place that I just drew out, and that's going to remove any form of bulginess from your zipper at the back when you fix it later. So once you're through, go ahead and cut out your back pattern. So guys, that's all for the drafting of the back pattern, and if you put them side by side with the front, you can see how they align, and you'll notice that the only difference between the front and the back is just the neckline and the zipper allowance at the back. So now it's time to draft out this pattern into my fabric. So I placed the front pattern on my fabric. My fabric is in a fold, and then added half an inch stitching allowance all the way around the neckline and the shoulders. And then for the side, as you can see, I'm adding 1.5 inch of stitching allowance, and at the end I'm adding 1 inch. So at the end 1 inch, and on the side 1.5 inch. And for the armhole, I did not add any stitching allowance. So for the shoulder and neckline, I added half an inch. So once you've added the stitching allowances all the way around your pattern paper on your fabric, go ahead and cut it out. Now for the back pattern, I added 1.5 inch to the side, 1 inch to the end, and for the center back, neckline, and shoulders, I added half an inch stitching allowance. And again for the armhole here, I did not add any stitching allowance. So after I was done, I went ahead to use these patterns to cut out my lining. But the thing with my lining is that I made sure that all my lining pieces were ½ inch shorter than my actual fabric at the end. So you can see what I have here on the front pattern. Every other thing is the same except this end where it's ½ inch shorter. Also for the back pattern, you can see that I reduced the lining by ½ an inch as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and join my lining and my actual fabrics together. So I'm placing them right sides facing each other, as you can see, and I'm going to go ahead and pin all the way around the neckline. So now I'm going to go ahead and stitch around the neckline where I have pinned here. So guys, after stitching around the neckline, this is what I had. Okay, so now coming to the end, I went ahead to also align the ends and stitch it down. Now when you align the ends, you'll notice that the armhole is no longer aligned. So what you're going to do is to align the armhole now, and then start pinning all the way to the end. When you get to the end, you will notice that the actual fabric will come up a little bit. That's what it's supposed to be. So once you're through with that, go ahead and pin down the other side as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch down these sides here and here with about half an inch of stitching allowance. And I did the exact same thing for the back pieces as well. So you can see how the actual fabric comes up a little bit on the back of the lining. That's what it's supposed to be. That prevents your lining from showing in front. Now, once you're through with this, you've done the same thing for the back patterns. We are going to go ahead and join the front and the back together on the shoulder. So you are going to place it lining to lining, fabric to fabric. Now, there's another way you can go about this, but I'll be using the lining to lining, fabric to fabric method here. And I'm going to go ahead and pin it down. It should look like this when you're done. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a straight stitch here. After making my straight stitch, this is what I have on the inside. If I open it up, this is what our shoulder is looking like. It's looking very neat. So I'm going to go ahead and arrange the body of this dress together. And then I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and stitch down my darts. The darts I had on my pattern paper, I'll place it on my fabric. After I was done stitching down the darts for both the front and the back, this is what I had. So now I'm going to go ahead and arrange my front and back pieces side by side. So arrange the back first, and from the shoulder, go ahead and arrange the front on it, so that we'll be able to mark out the area where we are going to fix our zipper and have our slits at the back. So after this, I'm going ahead to draw a line across using the front as my guide to draw a line into the back. Okay, now from the end, I'm going to come up by about 6 inches. This is going to be for my slit at the back here, and then I am going to stitch from somewhere here down to this slit area. Okay, now from the upper part, I'm going to be fixing a zipper. So from the upper part down to somewhere around here, I'm going to be fixing a zipper. So the only place I'm going to be stitching down the sewing machine is just in between this place here, from here down to this point. The other part is going to be the slit, and the upper part I'll be fixing a zipper. So guys, after stitching it down, this is what I had. You can see my slits here. So I'm going to go ahead and fix a zipper to the upper part now. And after I was done fixing the zipper, this is what I had. I made sure to use a very long zipper because this dress is going to be very fitted. Now the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is to attach my sleeve. I already went ahead to line my sleeves, as you can see. So now I'm going to go ahead and join the sleeve with the armhole area of the blouse. So I'm going to be placing the sleeve cap with the area where we had our joining on the armhole, and I'm going to go ahead and pin it all the way around. So I'll go over to the sewing machine now and stitch down the areas I pinned, and do the same thing for the other side as well. So after I was done attaching the sleeves, this is what I had. Next, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to the wrong side, just like you see me doing like this. And I'm going to go ahead and pin down the both sides. So after pinning it down, you're going to use your body measurements to stitch down the sides. So you're going to start taking the measurements from the sleeve all the way through to the rest of the body. After I was through joining the side, this is what my simple dress is looking like. And you can see how fitted it looks on me. Even the zipper area, you can see how there is no bulginess at the back. Now, to turn this dress from a short dress into a long one, first thing I went ahead to do was to close up the slit area that I opened before. And after that, from the shoulder, I went ahead to measure all the way to the end of this dress. Currently, I have 34 inches, and the long length I want this dress to be is a full tape. So what I did was to count the number of extra inches to know how long my flare was going to be. After I was done counting, I decided that my flare would be 28 inches long. For the radius of your flare, you have to measure around the area where you'll be placing the flare, which in this case is the end of my dress. So the measurement around my dress is 30 inches. So that 30 inches is what I went ahead to use to cut out my flare. So this area here, this radius, I used 30 inches, and for the length of the flare, I made sure it was 28 inches, which is the extra inches I need for my dress to be a long one. Now, I have a full video on my channel on how to go about cutting out a 360 degrees flare, which is what I cut out here. I'll be linking that down in the description box. So once you've cut out your 360 degrees flare using the radius around the end of your dress, now you're going to go ahead and join them together. So what you're going to do is to bring the end of your dress like I've done here, and you're going to place the flare around it right sides facing each other. If you've cut it out rightly, they should be exactly the same thing or very close to being the same thing. Most likely the flare might be a little bit bigger. So first thing you should do is to pin down both ends on the sides, and if there's any excess on the flare, you can now go ahead and just fold it in a little bit like this and just pin it down. So once you're through arranging the flare into the rest of the bodies, go ahead and pin all the way around the body. So the reason why I decided to change this from a short dress into a long one was because I wanted to be able to use this for a photo shoot that I had to do, and I wanted it to be a long dress. Okay, so once you're done pinning it down, just go ahead and stitch all the way around, and you're going to have a full long dress. So I'm going to head over to the sewing machine now and use my sewing machine to stitch down the areas I've pinned. So after I was done stitching it down, this is what I had. My full dress is ready, and this is what yours should look like. So which one do you prefer, the long one or the short one? Let me know in the comments.